You are now watching The Meech.
It's hard to believe the Nintendo Switch launched almost 7 years ago. Now this isn't a statement to showcase that the time just flew by. The Nintendo Switch has had a very unique history, unlike any other Nintendo console. After the failure of the Wii U, Nintendo needed a successor out as soon as possible. Usually, a Nintendo console will last about 5 to 6 years, but with the Wii U, it was a bit over 4 years, meaning that the Nintendo Switch likely had a shorter development cycle than prior consoles. Why'd I bring this up? Let's think about it. The first half of the Switch's life felt like a transitionary period. 2018, for example, mostly consisted of Wii U ports, and many games that we'd expect early on into the Switch's life are just now releasing. Unlike prior systems, Nintendo hasn't put out many games that truly showcase the Switch. There was Wii Sports and the Wii series on the Wii, Nintendo Land and Game & Wario on the Wii U, all being either launch titles or released shortly after the system's launch. But on the Nintendo Switch, there was Labo, but it mainly used the Joy-Cons as tools for more involved cardboard peripherals. Essentially, the Joy-Cons acted as the glue to hold the cardboard creations together, minus the wacky side effects.
You don't see poor people doing this!
But games like 1-2 Switch, and especially Nintendo Switch Sports, they lack that Nintendo charm and are absolute garbage. Although, everybody 1-2 Switch ain't that bad. Not great, but not as bad as everyone thought it was going to be. Come on, we got MC Horse out of it. Who else is gonna haunt my nightmares? But finally, we got a game that I've been asking for since the very beginning. A game that fully showcases what the Joy-Cons are capable of. And best of all, it's from the man, the myth, the garlic-scented treasure hunter himself, Wario. Wario has been known to not only lecture a shill about why a game selling well doesn't make it a good game, but he's also known to showcase the full potential of Nintendo systems. Many of the WarioWare games do an excellent job showcasing systems. WarioWare Twisted used a special cartridge with built-in gyroscope and rumble. WarioWare Touch took advantage of the Nintendo DS's touchscreen, and WarioWare Smooth Moves fully showcased the capabilities of the Wii. The thing is, we did get a WarioWare game on Switch 2 years back. I really enjoyed WarioWare Get It Together. However, it was mainly focused on having multiple playable characters with different abilities and being a hardware showcase. But to my surprise, and I'm sure many others, a second WarioWare game was announced in the legendary June 2023 Nintendo Direct, that being WarioWare Move It. WarioWare Move It not only seemed to be the Switch showcase I've been waiting for, but it's also a sequel to WarioWare Smooth Moves, which is widely considered to be one of the greatest WarioWare games ever made. And after playing WarioWare Move It, I have a lot to say, but unfortunately, it's not all positive, because this tropical vacation has some bad sunburns that simply cannot be ignored. So the question is WarioWare Move It as great as a tropical vacation, or is it like staying at Universal's Cabana Bay, where you're tricked into thinking you're on a tropical vacation, just so they can charge you $10 for a milkshake, and charge you for essentially breathing? In other words, a cash grab. Our story begins with Wario finding out there's a sweepstakes to win a tropical island vacation. Now usually, nobody wins these sweepstakes. Has anyone ever found out who won that Honey Nut Cheerios $5 every 10 minutes sweepstakes? That's what I thought, but Wario, being the glutton he is, got 50 garlic burgers and won the vacation. But unfortunately for him, 20 guests are also part of the package, meaning all the WarioWare employees come along with him. Now usually, I find it unacceptable to crash a vacation, because this relates to another story from my bizarre past where my mom was working at a restaurant talking about how she needed to take time off because she was going to visit family in Greece. A coworker overheard it and then was like, "Guess what? I'm going to Greece too." You heard that right. She overheard a conversation and then asked her rich daddy if she could go to Greece on a vacation. So they went along and tagged along uninvited. And what makes it even more insane? When she was in Greece and tagged along, She was looking for tacos and cheesecake. You go to a place with some of the best food on the planet, and you search for something that you'd find in the States. Goes to show that not only is she a crasher, but also an uncultured swine. The moral of the story? If you need to take time off to go on a vacation, just say you're going to Pyongyang. But in this case, Wario barely pays his employees and puts them in constant danger, so they deserve it. And from there, you'll see many of their own adventures unfold, such as Wario ending up in a forbidden shrine and needing to escape, Mona wanting to meet mermaids, and Jimmy T surfing on a shark. Despite WarioWare being primarily known for its wacky microgames and controls, the cutscenes and characters are a major part of the experience. They tell their own stories, and it's fun seeing what situations they end up in. This is one of WarioWare Move It's strongest aspects. Everything is tied to the tropical vacation theme. Even though each of the stories are different, they all feel like part of one big story rather than just random events. I especially love how many of the stories showcase interactions between the characters. Out of all the stories, my favorite is easily Dr. Krygor, Penny, and Mike's Curious Case of Kavard, but all the stories are interesting and have that WarioWare charm. But with the unique tropical vacation theme, they're even more memorable. The story is excellent, but as with any game, the gameplay is going to be the most important factor, and with Move It specifically, it has not only over 200 microgames, but some of the most unique and bizarre controls you'll ever see. WarioWare Move It takes full advantage of the Joy-Cons and their motion controls, meaning that it will not be compatible with the Nintendo Switch Pro controller, and will only work with the Nintendo Switch Lite if you have a pair of Joy-Cons, so it only works in TV and tabletop mode. In other words, you're going to primarily want to play this game on the TV. I wouldn't really recommend it if you have the Nintendo Switch Lite. When the Switch Lite released, I was kind of worried Nintendo would abandon the Switch's motion controls in HD Rumble, just like how Nintendo phased out the 3D on the 3DS when they released the 2DS. But thankfully, that is not the case. We're actually getting more motion-controlled games now than we were before. This is also a game you'd play like you're going numero uno, standing up. This is not a game where you can pull a couch Cody and play it sitting down. I'll always stand by this. Motion controls in the Wii were not a fad or a gimmick. They were a revolution, introducing a new way to game. There's absolutely still a place for motion control centered games in the current generation of gaming. WarioWare Move It is a sequel to WarioWare Smooth Moves, and this is immediately apparent when you're given the Form Stones, an ancient relic that resembles Joy-Cons, succeeding the Form Baton and Balance Stone in Smooth Moves. And with these Form Stones, you'll perform different techniques to play the microgames. Just explaining them won't do the controls justice, so I've included footage of my pet human playing the game. He's going to look absolutely ridiculous, but a normal WarioWare game is an oxymoron. It has to get silly. That is a requirement. Each technique is introduced and taught under a specific name. The choo-choo has you hold the Joy-Cons to your hips, like a choo-choo train, and start a magical journey. Scales have you hold the Joy-Cons up to the sky. The Big Cheese returns from Smooth Moves and allows you to become a true corporate hack, minus overworking and underpaying your employees as you go home under a golden parachute and down some Jack Daniels. All the forms are easy to understand and are given clever names that you'll remember, and you'll switch between them as you play the microgames. It's an excellent way to have many ways to play, but it never becomes convoluted or complicated. I'd say it's even more intuitive than Smooth Moves. Smooth Moves, I feel, had a bit too many techniques, but Move It has the perfect amount. The marquee difference between the Joy-Cons and Wii Remote is that you'll be performing more actions with both arms. In general, it allows for more intuitive movement. Some of the microgames also take advantage of the Joy-Con's seldomly used features, such as the IR camera. It's such a Nintendo feature. You know, someone at Nintendo was so proud and said, "Hey, I created this feature that allows the Joy-Con to detect hand gestures," only for it to hardly ever be used. Some techniques also require using the Joy-Con buttons in addition to the forms. Now, none of them use the analog sticks. Gee, I wonder why. But these are also fun and bring in some additional strategy, considering that you have to use both the form and the buttons. Even the SL and SR buttons are given some use. The IR camera, SL and SR buttons? Where was Move It in 2017? There's only one technique I'm not too crazy about. Some micro games require you to drop the Joy-Cons. This also means the wrist straps are a requirement. I know they're going to be fine since they're attached to the wrist strap, but Joy-Cons ain't cheap, and considering I make custom ones, dropping them instills a little bit of fear in me. I know everything will be fine, but I could live without the drop micro games. Honestly, most of them just equate to dangling your Joy-Cons as if you're Michael Jackson dangling blanket from a balcony. Now, this isn't a criticism with the micro games, but I do wonder if I'm the only one who feels that way, considering you have to drop the Joy-Cons. With motion controls, the accuracy is incredibly important, because inaccurate motion controls will often ruin a game. Now with the Joy-Cons, the motion detection is good, but not as accurate as the Wii Remote Plus. I don't know why that is. If someone knows the inner workings of the Wii Remote Plus versus the Joy-Cons, I'd love to know why the motion controls are better on the Remote Plus. But that's just how it is. But considering the game was designed around the Joy-Cons, how do the controls hold up? The good news is that a majority of the time, the motion controls work perfectly. They're accurate and responsive, but there are instances where the controls didn't work properly and were a bit finicky. 95% of the time, the controls work flawlessly, but that 5% of the time is still worth bringing up. I've been replaying the game quite a bit and wanted to see if it was the controller's fault or my own error. And unfortunately, it wasn't my own doing. I even played the game with 3 pairs of Joy-Cons to really make sure. This is also apparent often with the micro games that use the IR camera. Sometimes, it can't recognize gestures. It's kinda cool when it works, but I think I can confidently say the IR camera is the most useless feature ever put onto a video game controller. Well, maybe behind the Intellivision's numeric keypad. Perhaps the next Nintendo controller can have a thermometer that checks your hand temperature. In a game like this, you have to outweigh the pros and the cons, or in this case, the Joy-Cons. And overall, the experience with the controls was great. The wacky control schemes are half of the fun, but there's also the micro games themselves. They're what you'd expect from WarioWare, being incredibly fun, but also incredibly bizarre. Things like unclogging a toilet and uncovering a snapping turtle, smacking flies off of a cow's butt. That weirdness is absolutely present and had me laughing throughout my experience. There were some micro games I didn't care for, specifically the pen clicking one, which I didn't understand at all. Some of the boss micro games I also wasn't a fan of, specifically Jimmy T's robot cooking conveyor belt, but with over 200 of them, it's expected to have a few duds, but most of them are a ton of fun. I'd go as far to say, some of the best in the series. The controls and techniques are mostly what makes the micro games an absolute blast. It's something you just can't get with standard controls. Combine that with the creativity and strangeness of WarioWare, and you have an outstanding selection of micro games. WarioWare Move It also serves as a decent little workout. You'll be moving around and getting in some exercise. It's not going to replace a workout or a healthy diet, but it's an excellent addition to a fitness routine. And without a doubt, it's a much healthier and way more fun way to manage health than popping Jardians.
I have type 2 diabetes, but I manage it well. It's a little pill with a big story to tell.
And if you do drugs, you go to hell before you die.
That commercial, man. Gotta love the message of it. It's okay to down Alfredo meatballs, pop this magic pill, and that's the solution. As this lady flicks her tongue like a lizard. Whatever happened to This Is Serious, We Can Make You Delirious? Did you not learn anything from the 80s? The only criticisms I have, other than the occasionally finicky motion controls, are that I wish the micro games did dive into the more tropical island theme. They could still be out there and weird, but a central tropical theme would have been cool. Like, instead of smacking flies off of a cow's butt, it could have been smacking barnacles off of a manatee's butt. And I think 9Volt's Nintendo-themed micro games could have delved into more obscure territory beyond the typical NES references. There are some obscure references, but I would have liked to see more of them. Yeah, considering outside of the sometimes finicky controls, one of the criticisms I have is using a cow's butt instead of a manatee's butt, that really speaks volumes of how great the microgames and creative controls are. So let's see how the presentation fares. Starting with WarioWare Gold in 2018, the WarioWare series adopted a new art style, more similar to that of Rhythm Heaven than the original comic book look. I personally prefer the more detailed original designs, but I also like the modern look. WarioWare Move It uses the modern designs, but the characters are given summer and vacation outfits. Sometimes, it's simply short sleeves for the characters, but Wario is decked out with a tourist outfit, complete with a goofy hat, and a garlic clove Hawaiian shirt. Very nice attention to detail. Similar to WarioWare Gold, the fully voice-acted cutscenes are back. Get It Together skimped out on the cutscenes a bit, but Move It has some of the best and most memorable cutscenes in the entire series. Considering they're fully voice-acted, I know the one question everybody is wondering about, and it has to do with a certain character's voice. Is Jimmy T still groovy? Oh yeah. No, I know what the real question is. This is the first game to have Kevin Afghani succeed Charles Martinet as Wario, and he also voices Mario in one of the micro games. How does the new voice for Wario sound? In Super Mario Bros. Wonder, Afghani did an excellent job as Mario and Luigi. For Luigi, indistinguishable from Martinet, and although Mario sounds a bit different, he sounds more energetic, which I really liked. But for Wario, I'm sorry to say this, but the performance in Move It is not good.
A trip with these chumps doesn't feel like a prize. Ah! Just don't expect me to do any work. These rocks rock! Get it?
Wario's voice sounds like a bad impression of him, and it isn't even close to the original. His personality is still there, but his voice either needs work, or another actor should play him. Afghani is fine for Mario and Luigi. I'm not saying he can't do Wario, but his performance here isn't good. It doesn't mean it can't improve for future games though. But everyone else, they sound great. Especially Jimmy T and Orbulon. And although Wario's voice isn't great, I am glad they brought back voice acting in the cutscenes. When you're taught the form stone techniques, there's a narrator that explains the techniques, but with an adventurous tone. WarioWare Move It goes for the tropical island and adventure theme, so it makes sense. But honestly, man do I miss the narrator from WarioWare Smooth Moves. Now that game was going for a more karate dojo inspired theme, but that narrator, he had the most relaxing deadpan voice I've ever heard, and I would have loved if he returned. Music and sound design are also great. It's exactly what you'd expect from WarioWare. There's a specific style to the music and the sound effects of WarioWare, and it's present here. With WarioWare, you're playing many microgames in rapid succession, so you wouldn't hear the same song play in the background like you would for a Mario Kart track or Mario Wonder level. So in this case, the sound design is more important than the music, but what's here is really good, even if it's nothing incredibly memorable. And it doesn't have to be. I especially love the theme of Curious Case of Cave Art, and Mona's theme goes for steel drums, which is so relaxing. As much as I praise the presentation, I want to bring this up. I get this is a $50 game instead of the usual $60. While the animations are good, and I like the art style, it does feel cheap at times. I would at least expect the voice lines to match up to the characters talking, but for some reason, they don't. I get it would need to be localized for different languages, which is extra work, but Nintendo is the richest company in Japan. They're not pressed for money, and people need to stop making excuses. Now, we're not talking eating the coffee levels of cheap like in Pokemon, and since it's technically a budget title, it's a bit more forgivable, but I'd gladly pay $60 if the budget was increased, allowing for higher quality cutscenes. Now, the cutscenes feeling occasionally cheap is a criticism of the presentation that did impact my experience. The next one didn't, but I wanted to bring it up. Between boss stages, you'll take a short break and do a pose. No problem there, that's kind of fun. But following each pose, the game constantly reminds you, Don't stand too close to the TV! Remember to have enough space! Remember to take breaks! This annoys me. Nintendo has been notorious for seeing players as idiots. Look, I might be stupid, but I'm not dumb. Talking about the general graphics for WarioWare is near impossible, because with the microgames, anything goes. You'll have a crocheted gator and even Donkey Kong Jr. with vacuum cleaner arms. There are so many different art styles, so it's really a matter if they look consistently good and are creative, and I would say for the most part, they look great. Some microgames do look kinda off-putting, but that's part of the WarioWare charm. It's not designed to wow you, it's made to make you laugh. And Move It certainly succeeded. WarioWare games are not only known for being wacky and having some creative controls in microgames, but they're also known for unlockables and side content. So far, Move It has passed the gameplay category with flying colors and fared mostly well with the presentation. Is the content that sunburn that I'm talking about? The main story mode of WarioWare Move It lasts a few hours at the absolute most, but simply beating the game is not what WarioWare is about. It's replaying the microgames, score chasing, and the unlockables. There's a good amount of microgames, and almost all of them are great, some of the greatest in the series, and that level of replayability is still here. There were a few moments where I felt a bit iffy about Move It, but the more I played it, the more fun I had. What I'm planning on doing is aiming to get at least a score of 100 for every character's story. A huge focus of Move It is the multiplayer. There are quite a few different multiplayer modes, and it's clear this is the aspect of the game where the most focus was put into. I invited my pal Riley to play it, and to say we had an absolute blast with the multiplayer would be an understatement, because it is truly one of the best multiplayer games not just on the Switch, but that Nintendo has ever released. The microgames are already fun on their own, but watching a friend do all these crazy forms is absolutely hilarious. It might even get a bit embarrassing, but in a good way. For the Mario 3 microgame, you'll have to twerk it like Miley to fly with the raccoon suit, and he said, "Don't worry, I looked away." At this point, I'm so unhinged where nothing phases me, but we had a good laugh. You can play the microgames together in co-op, up to 2 players. You can play the story mode levels where sometimes you'll play together, but other times you'll alternate. But there is the double act mode where you can play all the microgames at the same time. This is my favorite multiplayer mode, but it gets way wackier and way weirder beyond here. There are the party modes, which for some reason require just one Joy-Con. I'm assuming because not everyone has an extra pair of them. Nice to have the option, but it's a bit weird that you're required to use one Joy-Con even if you have 2 pairs. But these party modes are absolutely wild. There are quite a few, but these were the standouts. Galactic Conquest is structured like a board game, but it has all sorts of insane microgames you'll be playing. With this mode, I felt the controls weren't that responsive, especially with the butt-stamping minigame, and the structure of the board game itself is nonsensical. Every time you land on a space, a random event occurs. It's not like Mario Party where only certain spaces cause an event, it's nearly all of them here. The best way to describe Galactic Conquest is like Mario Party, but on crack! But the most insane mode is easily Listen to the Doctor. You'll be playing microgames, but with a twist. The Doctor, who is totally certified and not at all related to the Pasco Doctor, will add a request to do another action in addition to the microgame, such as yelling how many hours you slept, making goofy expressions. You never know what this circus freak of a doctor is going to ask you to do. This is a mode that actually returned from the GameCube's WarioWare Mega Party games, but thanks to the HD, this doctor looks much freakier and scarier now. And I love it. Multiplayer is the real highlight. If you're looking for an excellent multiplayer game, WarioWare Move It ranks amongst the top dogs like Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, Mario Party Superstars, and Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, though I do wish it had online multiplayer. It would have been nice to play it online with a friend, and I do think it really needed some online. In terms of single player content, you're getting the story mode, a handful of unlockable minigames, and the 200 microgames. To clarify, minigames are not microgames. These are games within the game that are similar to arcade games. I won't spoil them, but they were quite fun. That might sound fine, but this is where I was kinda disappointed. WarioWare games have always had fun unlockables. WarioWare Gold had it all, and even Get It Together had a good amount of unlockables and single-player content, but Move It is sadly and surprisingly lacking. And now, it's time for Nintendo Fanboy Excuse of the Day. Excuse number 92! It's a party game! Of course it won't have many single-player offerings! I call bull on that. Yes, WarioWare Move It is a party game, but WarioWare has always had a lot of content in terms of unlockables and single-player modes. It's like when they say, Faithful Remake to defend Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. Faithful Remake translates to Lazy 101 Remake, and It's a Party Game translates to there's a lack of unlockables and solo content. Stop with the excuses and trying to justify it, because it is a problem that should be addressed rather than rationalized. I love unlockables like trophies in Super Smash Bros. And stuff like the customization options in Get It Together. Move It needed a few more minigames and side modes, but it needed things like achievements and collectibles, additional incentives to replay the microgames rather than just getting a high score. And considering the vacation theme, what a wasted opportunity not to have souvenirs. At the end of the day, a shiny souvenir of Jimmy T in a surfing outfit is mostly cosmetic and doesn't affect the gameplay, and Move It lacking them certainly didn't ruin the game, but it needed some fun collectibles and more side modes, because if it had them, it would easily be my favorite WarioWare, and it would be near perfection. So the real question is, what's going to be the final verdict? So far established, WarioWare Move It has outstanding gameplay, a good presentation despite issues with Wario's voice, and some great multiplayer. But it really needed more side content for single player, and it especially needed fun collectibles or other incentives to keep replaying the microgames. So what's the verdict? WarioWare Move It is not lacking in content to the level of games like Nintendo Switch Sports and Mario Strikers Battle League, where there's virtually nothing to do. Considering the history of lacking content in Nintendo's games recently, it's important to clarify it's only limited to extra content in Move It. The key word is extra, not necessities like stages or having Daisy playable. However, it did need a bit more meat and garlic seasoning. The best comparison is to Mario Party Superstars. Mario Party Superstars is a great game, but needed more in terms of boards and characters. WarioWare Move It is also great, but really needed that extra oomph with unlockable collectibles and single-player side modes and minigames. Like I said before, things like souvenirs aren't technically necessary, but they're important to me, and I'm sure many others as well. I'm hoping maybe an update will bring in more content, because Move It is still a pretty good package. I hate that I have to suggest that, but it's not a case of completing a meal that was served unfinished, more like seasoning a finished meal and giving you an extra side. Despite that sunburn in terms of extra content, the overall experience was a wacky tropical vacation that's an absolute blast. It's yet another gem in Nintendo's outstanding 2023 lineup, though this one oddly smells like garlic. I initially was more critical going into the review, but WarioWare Move It pulled a reverse Uno card, meaning that the more I played it, the more I enjoyed it. What usually happens is if I'll play a game I'm critical towards, I'll have fun at first, but the more I play the game, the issues become increasingly apparent and frustrate me. But in Move It, the microgames and intuitive controls stand out even more after replaying them, that I can at least forgive the lack of extras. WarioWare Move It gets the ranking of Silver Treasure. It's an absolute blast, and is not only a great WarioWare, but is the best showcase of the Joy-Cons. I've been waiting for a game like this ever since the Switch launched, and Move It delivered. If you love WarioWare or love the motion-controlled games of the Wii era, I can absolutely recommend WarioWare Move It. Before we wrap things up, don't forget to enter the Pink Gold Peach figure giveaway. All you have to do is subscribe to the channel and comment on this video explaining what Pink Gold Peach means to you. The winner will be the funniest or best comment, so get creative. The giveaway ends on December 1st, and the winner will be announced December 4th. A pink gold peach figure doesn't feel like a prize, but it sure is. So what do you guys think? Did you prefer WarioWare Get It Together or WarioWare Move It? Let me know in the comments, and as always, keep calm and dada on.